Hey folks, and welcome to TK Power Sports. Today we're looking at this, the 2023 Polaris Sportsman XP1000, and you can probably tell by how muddy the machine is and by how muddy I am that we've already had a lot of fun on this thing, and I'm going to tell you all about it right now. With a walk around here, folks. So powering this Polaris Sportsman Ultimate Trail Edition is a 952cc twin cylinder engine, and it's putting out a total of 90 horsepower, and those are pretty substantial numbers. And then talking about these tires, that's a set of 27-inch Duro tires, and yes, the fronts are a little skinnier than the rear. So this is not a square setup. They are a little bit different front to back. Now we can look at the racks here. Rack capacity in the front is 120 pounds, and in the back it's 240 pounds. But this is an interesting new design. Essentially, you just have these bars on either side that you can tie down to or attach Polaris accessories to. And then this whole front rack with a couple of these little rubber holders actually opens up and reveals storage. So you get a nice storage bin there, but it's actually more than storage. You can see over here you have these little lock pins. If we open that up, this bin pops right out of here, revealing a whole bunch of things you need to get to. Most importantly, your battery. So your battery's right there. You also have coolant reservoir over there. A couple other things you need to get to for maintenance. So that is nice. You pull the storage tray out and you get good access. And the other thing I'll point out up here is this guy. There's your fuse box, and right there's some wiring for adding accessories. So really nice access here on the Polaris. And then even these kind of rubber holders, they're pretty tight and there's no slack in them. They hold that thing down really well. Now looking back, the other thing I want to point out as I walk around here is this seat. It might not look like it, but man, this is a extremely cushy, soft seat. It's also a nice wide seat back here by your butt, and then it gets skinny up by your legs, and I appreciate that just for a nice ergonomic riding position. Now, as we get around to the rear end, I can show you a trick the rear rack has. Bam! Another little storage trunk. And that one's fairly deep. There is a rubberized edge here, a gasket to hopefully make sure that no water gets into that either. Now, because we have this Ultimate Trail Edition, we have a couple upgrades from the package. I mentioned the tires. The other thing, these bumpers, big steel bumpers in the front and the back, and that's going to make sure that you're protecting all of your plastic bodywork when you're running through the bush and crashing through the trees like we enjoy doing. I can show you underneath the Sportsman XP as well, because we put it up on our ramp. You'll see the very front bash plate is steel, our magnet stuck to it, but then immediately behind it, yes, that is plastic, or likely some type of composite plastic. So the belly pan here is that composite, the front is steel. I like this combination. I think the very first bash plate in the front, in the nose, that's gonna take the largest beating. And then once you get past that, well, you might be dragging on stuff, but you won't be hitting it with a ton of force. So the poly or the composite should be more than enough back there. Now finally, I mentioned the rack capacity. I'll also tell you, you can tow up to 1,500 pounds with this ATV, but I do have one issue with that. It's just a 1 1/4 inch hitch receiver. Just about every other brand in the industry has moved to a 2-inch hitch receiver, Can-Am, Yamaha. So I'm a little confused as to why Polaris wouldn't give that to us. I personally love the 2-inch hitch receivers because it's exactly what we use on our trucks. So we have a ton of those hitches, and it's nice to be able to just pop it out of your truck, pop it in your ATV, and not need a special hitch for that. Now I can come up here sort of the cockpit area and show you a couple more features. So right here on our screen underneath, we get plugins. You get a 12 volt right there, and then that's the Polaris charger. So you can run different accessories off of that as well, which is kind of nice. Our small screen here delivers all the information you could need. Over here you have your performance, standard, and work switch. Those are the 3 different drive modes that are on this unit, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And here's your screen. Delivers all the info you could need. It's pretty clear. Not super high tech or anything along those lines, but still it is a nice looking screen that delivers all of the pertinent information. And then you can go in and change different things. One setting I think is cool is right here, require pin to start. So if you actually really want an extra layer of security, you can make someone have to jump on here and then put a pin in to actually start the machine. So I think that's just about it for this. In terms of the controls, very simple. There's your kill switch. This down here is to change your speedometer, but then also to reverse override. So in reverse, it's gonna cut your, or it's gonna limit your RPM. If you hold that, you can go fast in reverse. On this handle, you get your 4-wheel drive switch. It's just a tilt switch, so to the left, you're putting it in 2-wheel drive, to the right, all-wheel drive, and then finally you get the Polaris hill descent control setting. They call it ADC over here, and we'll also show you how that works real soon. And now everybody, let's dive into how this Sportsman XP1000 actually handles. See you later, mosquito. It is bug heaven out here, so we'll try to get this done quick. XP1000, after riding it all day today, I have to tell you, it's essentially defined by its power. This power plant, I mean, we have performance, standard, and work mode, and the modes make a big difference. In work mode, you really have to dig into the throttle to get the power. In standard, it jumps pretty good, and in performance, I don't think I've ever felt a quicker ATV. In performance mode, I just lightly touch the throttle and the thing just takes off. First of all, I was trying to pull a couple jumps off of this sort of tiny little hump we have, and then there's immediately some trees after it. So that was one of those things where I didn't want to carry a lot of speed into it. I wanted to come up to it, burp the throttle, get the little hop, and then land. And that's exactly what I did. But performance mode made that possible. Let me also tell you that in performance mode, you will wheelie just about all the time, whether you want to or not. This thing is just that powerful that if you put that thing to the bar, almost every time the front end lifts up. And then of course you see here, if you're trying, well, yeah, you can pop the front end up, no problem at all. So I think you have to kind of wrap your head around that first and foremost. The unbelievable, ridiculous power here is really the defining characteristic of this XP1000. Well, I've been going on and on about the engine. Let's see what it can do. I'm going on a max speed run. Alrighty folks, time for the top speed run here on the Sportsman 1000, and considering how quick it is, I imagine it's probably pretty fast as well. Alrighty. So performance mode is on. I've got it in all-wheel drive. Let's see what it'll do. Launching in 3, 2, 1, let's go! Doggies. Well folks, I saw 80 miles per hour and it did feel pretty much topped out. If I had a bit of a longer runway, a bit more dirt road here, maybe I could have got a little more out of it, but man, 80 miles per hour is pretty dang quick on an ATV, and this Sportsman also gets up to that speed pretty quickly as well. So now let's get into some of the driving dynamics. I mentioned the ridiculous power. I will tell you, the thing I was most disappointed in today, is the suspension travel. I just thought with all of this power, this machine should probably come with a little bit more travel, a little bit more than 10 inches in the front and maybe up to 12 in the rear, something like that. But Polaris just hasn't done that here. So what I found was, because the power is so ridiculous, I could actually find the limits of the suspension fairly quickly. And I'm not sure how well you can see it from this shot, but I was flying down this big rutted out trail, and where I expected the suspension to sort of swallow some of those ruts up, I ended up, boom, bouncing and actually catching air in the front, maybe even the rear, because the travel just wasn't quite enough. So on this machine, I also don't have clickers to adjust my compression. I just have preload down there, which I can adjust. So you do get a little bit of adjustability, but not a ton. Now, let me also qualify that suspension statement. If you want more travel, well, Polaris is happy to sell you a scrambler. They have another model in the lineup, which is meant to be that all-out sport performance model. So it's also possible that they didn't up the travel here simply to make sure they didn't eat into some of those scrambler sales as well. Now, running through those corners, this machine is very simple to steer with the throttle. You put it in two-wheel drive, you burp it, and the back end breaks loose, no problem. So I was really rotating it around corners. That felt good. My body weight didn't feel like it was doing a ton when I was leaning into those corners. And again, I probably chalked that up to the suspension. Some machines just feel easier to manipulate by moving around, and this one didn't. It really feels like it needs input from the handlebars. And speaking of handlebar input, another great feature is selectable power steering modes. You now get 3 different power steering modes you can select from low to high, and this is important in my eyes. Not everybody likes the same level of power steering, so it is a personal preference. I always say that on a long trail ride, if I'm out for 6 hours, I might turn it up to high because I want it to be an easy experience. I don't want to get tired. On the flip side, me personally, I usually like the low setting. Get out of here, man. I like the low setting because I like feedback. I like to feel everything in my hands, and I like a little bit of boost, but not a ton. The bigger point here, though, is that you now have choices. So engine performance is ridiculous. Handling is pretty good. Ergonomics are great. Love the utility. This machine is really impressive. And now we have to talk about maybe one of the most important factors, though, the price. Here in Canada, this machine as it sits, you're talking about $18,000 out of the gate. That is not inexpensive for a power sports machine. In fact, it's pretty expensive for a power sports machine. Although again, you're getting that ridiculous performance, but just know if you want the power out of a Polaris like this, you gotta pay. And if you're asking my opinion, the 700s, the 800s, 850s, those are more than enough power. Going for the 1000, I hesitate to say it's too much because who defines how much is too much? But I'll just say that this machine, it's so visceral to ride, but it's also, the mistakes happen a lot quicker. This is the kind of machine where, yeah, you're going so quick all the time and it can accelerate so fast that you have to be riding it 100% of the time. You are dialed in to riding this thing. And if you're not, it will bite you quickly. And this is where I come back to the 700s and 800s. They're a little bit more friendly. They're still going to deliver the thrill of the power, but not quite to sort of the extreme level that something like this Polaris does. Well, folks, we have arrived at the end of this one. So what's the verdict on the Sportsman XP1000? Well, if you're just looking for a thrilling trail ride, this machine will deliver it over and over again. And then I really appreciate the fact that the utility of the storage and the racks are still here. So if you do want to do some work with this machine, you can do it as well. You just got to be ready to pay for it. Now, of course, I want to hear from you though. So please go in the comments. Let me know what you think of this Sportsman. As always, while you're down below, don't forget to hit the like button, mash that subscribe button, and hey, maybe hit the join button to become a member of TK Power Sports. And then come right back here to the channel to see what we're testing next. And if you'll excuse me, I always got lots more riding to do. See ya.